Hello, nice to speak to you this evening. This evening, depends where you are in the world, doesn't it? I'm speaking to you from Nottingham in England, where it is now 7 o'clock in the evening. And if it's other time in the day for you, good day, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it may be. To introduce myself, the name's Tony Waltham. I'm a geologist. I've been a geologist for years. I taught in a university for many years, mainly teaching engineering geology. And I travel all around enjoying geological scenes wherever they may be. I've been to Iceland a dozen times, I think, something like that, and travel all over the island as well. So I know a little bit about it, which is quite good, I hope, anyway. And I hope I can share a little bit of that with you this evening as well. When we're talking about ice and snow in Iceland today, and that's all. It's only a part of it. Iceland, of course, is known for its volcanic geology, its volcanoes, and the geology of Iceland is great stuff. It really is. But that's not our subject for tonight. We're on to ice and snow. But the other thing, of course, is that this is where I normally say, if you've got any questions when you see me around the ship, because we're on ships, aren't we? Then stop me and ask me. It's very nice to hear from you. Well, we can't do that now because I'm at home and we're not on a ship. But if you've got any questions, you've got this clever screen thing which comes up, which someone else is manipulating, in which case just put your question in and we'll get to questions at the end. But I think that's it. So we're probably now going to launch off into the ice and snow of Iceland. I'm hoping we will anyway, but I can only see on my screen what the actual pictures are. So we'll go with those. So there's, well, the title slide says it all, does it not? Iceland, what a wonderful country it is. It's a very civilized place indeed. It's not totally barren. There's a lot of real wilderness there, but then there are also villages, towns, and civilization only on a small percentage of the entire island. But that's where the people all live. And in between, you've got a lot of mountain wilderness as well, including, of course, a lot of ice and snow. This actually, the picture you're looking at now, is the highest mountain in Iceland, Öræfjall, Jökull, down on the south coast. It's only about 6,500 feet, something like that. So it's not terribly high, but it's impressive enough to get the ice on it and the glaciers too. And glaciers, of course, are what we have plenty of in Iceland. This is the classic. This is the one which any geological tour or any tour to Iceland went to this one in the past, always did, because it's a textbook glacier coming down from the mountains, ending up at a rather nice pro-glacial lake. It's called the Jökull. Now, words here, Jökull, you're going to hear more of that one. Jökull is Icelandic for either glacier or ice cap. So they're both called Jökulls, which may be confusing a little bit. Anyway, this is a Jökull, but that is a picture taken about 30 years ago. And in fact, since 2010, it is looking very different because it's on the side of the volcano which produced the big ash cloud, Eyjafjallajökull, in 2010. And that actually destroyed most of that glacier. So that's a rarity photograph you're looking at there. Instead, let's go around the corner there, where we got, in this case, another glacier, one of the many glaciers coming down off the big ice cap, which you can see in the far distance there on the right-hand side. That is the Vatnajökull. That's the largest ice cap in Iceland, with dozens of glaciers coming from it, radiating in all directions. This is just one of them coming down out on the eastern side, in actual fact, is this one too. So ice caps, we've got plenty. And if you look at a map of Iceland, you can see them standing out there as well now. The white blobs you can see here on this, we're of course here on Google Earth, and thank you very much, Google Earth. The white blobs are not cloud, they are all ice caps. The big one down the bottom there, Vatnajökull, now got a name on it. The other three just to the west of it are really sizable ice caps as well. Langjökull, Hofsjökull, Mýrdalsjökull, never mind which one's which. And a few little ice caps scattered around as well. Up towards the north centre of the island, below the ND of Iceland, you can see there we've got a number of whitish ridges there. Those are just snow-covered ridges, but otherwise the white you're looking at is ice caps as well. And we've got plenty of them. Vatnajökull is a big ice cap. I think it ranks number 4 in the world. Antarctica and Greenland obviously way off on their own. And the South Patagonia ice cap is about twice as big as Vatnajökull. But then we come in with Vatnajökull, and this is bigger than anything else around too. To think of the Alaskan ice fields, and I know many of you watching this are from the USA. In Alaska, we've got the Juneau ice field. It's about half the size of Vatnajökull, so that gives you some idea of scale, okay? And if you want to get down into the main part of North America, the Columbia ice field is a tenth the size of Vatnajökull, so very, very much smaller indeed. Right, so that's your big ice cap, and there we are again, where you can see it. Again, with one of the glaciers coming down from it, and the ice cap up in the far distance there. You can barely see it there, lurking behind the mountains. Some of the ice caps are much smaller. This one here, you can see, it's just got a little bit of a glacier coming down from it. This actually is the backside of a Farajökull, with a glacier coming down into the bit of a grassy valley down in the foreground. And the nice thing is that there are just a few glaciers in Iceland which do come down into accessible areas instead of staying out in the wilderness. And here you can see this is the ring road around Iceland, and then the back of it, the view here, we've got this is the Svinefell Glacier, or Svinefellsjökull, to put it in the local terminology. And a 5-minute walk from your car, and you can be standing on the side of this. It's a lovely glacier. It's a classic one, slowly moving left to right in this view as well. And there we are going still left to right as well. The blue colour showing through rather nicely, the bits of debris in the moraine in it as well. It's got all the classic features of a glacier, everything you want to see as well. Now, the one thing that we do not have in Iceland is any glaciers which reach down to the ocean, to the sea. The nearest we've got is one which comes down to a lake. And this is one of the outlets from Vatnajökull. We're on, this is Google Earth again. That's the big white blob is Vatnajökull as well. And the lake down on the bottom right-hand side there, it's called Jökulsárlón. And I've coloured it in blue on this image as well. It shouldn't be that colour really. That is the nearest thing we've got to seeing a glacier coming down into water. Get a bit closer to it, and there it is again, still on Google Earth. Breiðamerkurjökull, which is the name of the glacier from the Vatnajökull ice cap, which is off the top of the picture. Are you getting your Icelandic terminology now? The lake there, the lake we're looking at, Jökulsárlón, is down there, sort of lower right, the rather pale murky blue colour. The reason it's there is because it's held up by a moraine which you can, if you're good, you can pick it out on this view. But here I'm making it a bit more obvious now as well, and I've coloured it green in there. And this is a moraine which was left by the main glacier when it was coming down here, and it was left basically from the Little Ice Age, the Neoglacial of 200 or 300 years ago. That's when that moraine was basically formed. Since then, the ice has retreated from it in the classic form, and therefore we got this lake, which is therefore formed behind the moraine. Jökulsárlón, the meaning, let's get back into the Icelandic language now. Jökull, ice cap, river, lón, lagoon. I mean, lagoon doesn't have to be tropical, it's just a lake down near the sea. So this is therefore the Glacier River Lagoon, which is hidden behind that moraine down there. Now, the other thing about this moraine and this whole lake and Jökulsárlón is it's very accessible, because the yellow line, which has now suddenly appeared on your map, is the ring road, the main road which goes all the way around Iceland, the key feature of their transport system, basically, because there's virtually nothing inland at all. And that goes on the moraine and it crosses over the river, which is the outlet from the Jökulsárlón lake, over a bridge. Another view of it coming up here now, and an aerial view. I have to apologise for this, or thank someone for it. The photographs I'm using on these talks they're all my own. I prefer it that way. It's the best way of doing it. But I don't fly. I've got no wings. So the various aerial photographs I'm using, I've scrounged from people or friends or borrowed or lifted them from somewhere. So this is not one of mine, but it's a lovely view of Jökulsárlón. There you can see bottom left there, the ring road going across with a bridge over the river. That's the outlet river. The sea is off to the left of the picture. You can't see it. And the lake you can see extending now. And in the distance, you can see the glaciers, which are feeding down into that lake from the main Vatnajökull ice cap, which is beneath the cloud off to the top right of the picture, basically. But of course, where the glaciers come down into the lake, like any glacier which comes into water, it then breaks up, it carves and produces icebergs. And we get, therefore, little icebergs on this lake, which then drift with the current and with the wind across the lake. So they all gather up down here near the outlet, as you can see there, a cluster of them, which makes it a wonderful tourist site, because it means you can drive along the ring road of Iceland. You can then park your car in a car park. You can walk about 10 yards and you can stand on the edge of this lake and you can look at this lovely series of icebergs. Okay, they're little icebergs. They're not Antarctic size or anything like that, but this is great stuff. It really is. It's one of the classic sites of Iceland. And the other thing is, it's only been there since 1934. Up until 1934, the glacier reached right down to the terminal moraine, which is now holding the lake. And then since then, it has retreated back, leaving the lake getting larger and larger over time. This is a view taken, this was back in the 1970s. This is 40 years ago I took this picture. I was standing on the moraine when I took the picture, and I'm looking across the lake, and there's the glacier. One of the glaciers, there's a number of them coming to the lake in the background. They have since retreated from that position. You would not see that view looking like that now, because the glacier is continually going back, has been ever since 1934. And so now we've got a larger lake and more icebergs on it. That's a view of the Jökulsárlón in the summer. In winter, it looks a little bit different. This is a more recent photograph, so the glacier is further away. You can see it in the background there. But you've got the icebergs, you can see them scattered around, but also you'll notice there's a couple of people down there, bottom right, who are actually walking on the lake. Well, they're not, are they? They're walking on the ice, because the beautiful thing about this lake is it freezes over in winter. It gets ice, which is about a metre thick or something like that. So you can get onto it. I was completely taken by surprise. I was there with Jan, my wife. We were there a few years ago. And we didn't really think about this lake being frozen. So we walked over the moraine to get to the lake, saw those two guys down there on the lake and thought, well, this is great. This is accessible. You can get down to it. They were actually taking photographs and they then moved off and moved away. So we then went down onto it and we wandered around on the lake, had it ourselves. It was one of those magical experiences. There, Jan, that's my wife. You're going to see more of her. She's scale on most of the photographs. She's on the ice. The moraine in the background there, you can see just over the top of that moraine is the main road, and then there's the ocean beyond there as well. But we're now on the lake, frozen with these icebergs around there, frozen into the ice, and we could walk around and see them. It was a magical experience. It was just one of those weird things we never really expected to find when we got there, and having it ourselves made it even more beautiful as well. Lovely little bit of ice you can see there. Now, of course, those little icebergs, those bits of ice which have come down, they were originally part of the Vatnajökull ice cap. Then the ice all flowed and squeezed. It came down the glacier, then it broke up and the chunks came out into the lake. They've tipped over a bit as well now. But what you're looking at there is the layered ice from the main Vatnajökull ice cap. If we went up onto the ice cap, actually it would be really not very exciting. Now, I cheated a bit here because I've never been onto the Vatnajökull ice cap. I've never been up onto it. This is the Greenland ice cap, which Jan and I went on to a few years ago. But I could tell you it was Vatnajökull, you could not tell the difference. And it's not terribly exciting because it's a huge mass of ice and whiteness extending over a very large distance, and that's about it. It gets more interesting when you get to the glaciers, which are coming down from the ice cap, because the glaciers, of course, they're the ice, the rivers of ice flowing down the valleys. And when they flow down the valleys, the ice, it's a plastic deformable material, yes, but it breaks up and it breaks into these crevasses, which you can see there so beautifully. This is actually the Fjords Glacier, which is one of the ones coming off Vatnajökull on the south side in the national park there on the south coast. And you can see all the crevasses there. These have been formed where the ice has been broken because it's been either squeezed between rock buttresses or it's flowed over a rock ridge, or all sorts of reasons why crevasses can be formed. But the crevasse glacier is an amazing terrain when you get down onto it. There you are. That's down on the same glacier, Skatafell, that we were looking at in the previous photograph, which was taken from the top of a hill nearby. And here, these glaciers, they're great with great yawning crevasses over them as well. Quite exciting, really. A great place to go for a walk. But I would add that I went for a walk on the Skaftá Glacier some years ago, not with Jan in this case. This is Pete, a friend of mine. And I would point out that we did have crampons on. It's not a good idea to go walking on a glacier like that when you've only got shoes on with slick soles. Crampons are a good idea, particularly, in fact, if you're going to walk along a little bit of glacier like that. Pete there coming in on the ridge there. We were there purely for the fun of walking around on narrow bits of ice ridges. We were actually there because what we wanted to see was a feature of a glacier. Any glacier in the ice cap, during the summer, the meltwater from solar radiation develops on the surface, just melting surface ice, gathers in streams, flows in streams across the top of the glacier, and eventually will find a way down into the glacier. It will find a way down into a crevasse. And this is what Pete and I were looking for. And we found one. We found a little stream. You can see it in the foreground there as well. That stream, which is going away from the camera, and there, just where Pete's standing, it then drops down a hole into the ice. Correct name for this, it's not actually a crevasse there because it's been shaped by the water. The correct name for it actually is a moulin, which is actually a French term meaning a pothole. And Pete and I wanted to look down it. We were both at that time in our youth, we were cavers, and the idea of actually going down a cave in a glacier instead of in limestone seemed rather madly attractive to us, which is therefore why we went down it. And there we are. That actually, you may not, on your screen, I think you've now got a picture of me down on the bottom left there, and that's what I look like now. This is me about 35 years ago or something like that, when I was young, well equipped for exploring down glaciers, as you can see, with a safety helmet, which I forgot to put on, and we got Jumars and a rope. We were actually very ill equipped for the whole trip. But we've got a rope. The hole was only about 50 feet deep, so we could get down there on the rope with Jumars easily enough. And at the bottom then we were eager to see what happened to this cave in the glacier. Where did it go to? Well, that's the passage which went off from the bottom of the moulin for some years. That's Pete coming along it with the lovely, lovely blue colour there, which is the blue you get in ice where the sunlight, the white sunlight, has had all the red taken out of it by the oxygen in the ice. So that's why you get blue ice, and shows up beautifully when you're in an ice cave like this. We went along this passage for, not very far. I don't know, what was it, 20, 30 yards or something like that. And then came to another waterfall, just like a cave system, and another drop of about 30, 40 feet. But we hadn't got another rope, so that was as far as we got. It was an experience to go down into it. That was actually doing it the hard way, because of course the water which goes down this cave and drops down there in the cave we're in and follows down eventually comes out at the bottom end of the glacier. So if you go to the bottom end of the glacier, then the water comes out of the cave, and very often you can just walk into it a lot easier than coming down ropes down the crevasses. This is the Glacier, another outlet from the Vatnajökull on the north side in this case as well. But there you can see the stream coming out. And in this case, it does come out of an accessible walk-in cave. They're not always there, but in some cases there are, which is really rather nice. The only problem about these particularly at the bottom end of a glacier. When you're down in the bottom end of a glacier, you're looking at the melt zone. You're in the melt zone. You're in the wasting zone. The wasting is what the term geologists use for where a glacier basically dies and turns itself into water, which flows away. So it's crumbling away, it's collapsing. And the collapsing zone of these tunnels at the bottom end of a glacier is often not the best place to be in terms of blocks of ice dropping off from the roof when you're down there, or in fact completely collapsing as well. But you can get certain places where you can get into one. Now, this is not one of my photographs. This actually is I lifted this off the internet. It's an advertising photograph for a company in Reykjavik, advertising, come and visit a glacier and come inside a glacier. And there are now tour companies in Reykjavik, lots of them as well, and they run tours out to the Langjökull, where every year somewhere there's going to be one of the glaciers which is going to have a bit of a cave which is accessible for a few yards, and you can go out and visit it as a tourist site. Every year is different. So I don't know which one this was. I don't know when it was either. It certainly won't be there now, because these caves, the glacier caves like this, last a few years at most and then they're gone. But that's how you can see a glacier cave when you're in Iceland, if you get there as well. Not this year with all the COVID restrictions, but if you go next year, you can do that, worth doing as well. Anyway, that's ice as it is in Iceland at the moment. Let's go back and have a look now what ice did to Iceland during the great ice ages of the last last million or so years as well. The map you're looking at there is, as it says there, about 500,000 years ago. This is the extent of the ice caps at their maximum during the greatest ice age. You must recognise this sort of thing from school as well, with a big ice cap over Scandinavia and northern Russia, and then over the whole of Canada and a big chunk of the USA as well. And of course that ice is then modifying the landscape which was beneath it. Iceland too had its own ice cap. It was never connected to the other ice caps because it was out in the middle of the Atlantic, but it had its own ice cap there. That was 500,000 years ago during the big early ice age. If we now go back to the last of the ice ages, this is the most significant one, because the last ice age, which was at its maximum about 20,000 years ago. In England, we refer to it as the last glacial maximum. We refer to it as the Devonian. In North America, you refer to it as the Wisconsinan, but basically that's the same period of time. And this was the last ice age, when the glaciers then modified the landscape again. And what we see in today's landscape are very much the features from this last ice age. They tend to have annihilated the features from earlier ice ages anyway. So this is the important one. And again, you can see during the maximum, 20,000 years ago, there's an ice cap over Iceland. You can see it up at the top left there. And that was there until about 15 to 12,000 years ago, when it progressively melted away. But let's go back to Iceland itself now. There's the map, we've seen it before, all right? But that's Iceland as it looks now with its miniature ice caps on. And that is Iceland as it looked 20,000 years ago, when you just basically had a mass of ice, and that was all. You couldn't see Iceland at all. We know the extent of this ice cap roughly anyway, from in part, the red lines which I've marked on this map. Those are seafloor moraines. They're moraines which were left by the glaciers when they got to their maximum extent, when sea level was much lower, 400 feet lower anyway in those times. And that's as far as they are. And these have now been mapped by marine surveys around parts of the coast, as you can see there. So we know the extent of the Iceland ice cap 20,000 years ago. And what did that do to the landscape? Well, this comes in two halves. The main plateau, the main central part of the highlands of Iceland, particularly at the southwest, southeast and the northwest, the big plateaus there were very little affected by the ice. I mean, the ice was sitting on top of that plateau. You can see in this photograph, which is up on the north coast, and the ice was probably at least 1,000 feet thick and probably 1,000 meters thick during the maximum as well. But it was just sitting there. It was accumulating, it was flowing very slowly, but it was also frozen to the ground. And consequently, any flow within the glacier was basically deformation within the ice itself. There was very little erosion taking place, and glacial erosion of the plateaus was hardly a feature at all. Instead, but in contrast then, if you go to the edges of the plateaus, then there were valleys. There were valleys which were cut there by rivers, because rivers cut nearly all the valleys that we see anywhere during the interglacial periods, which lasted for far longer. The interglacials were 100,000 years at a time. The glaciers were 10,000 years at a time. The rivers had cut the valleys, and the valleys are there. The ice then occupied the valleys, and the ice then flowed down the valleys, and the ice then modified the valleys. So a glaciated valley is a river-formed valley which had been modified by the ice to give the shapes and the features and the valleys which we now see in Iceland as well, like that one. And of course, surely you remember this from your school geography. There's a classic characteristic feature of a glacier, of a glaciated valley, is that it will have a U shape, the broad shape, because that's the profile that the glacier is stable, basically a hemicylinder, as opposed to a V shape of a river valley. So there's your classic glaciated valley up on the north coast of Iceland as well. And these are what we have in Iceland in abundance. Also, of course, oh, I've forgotten that one was coming on. Oh, lovely. Not one of my photographs, obviously. It's an aerial shot. That is a superb glaciated valley. That is the big valley coming down from the Central Highlands towards Akureyri, which is on the north coast, which is just off the picture, off the bottom of the picture as well there. But classic glaciated valley, it really is. But then, of course, all these glaciated valleys, they led out to the coast. And the coast at that time was different. Remember, during the ice ages, with all that ice, with all that water trapped in the form of ice up on the high mountains and on Canada and Siberia and Scandinavia, meant that sea level was 400 feet lower than it is now. So this photograph we've got now of a valley up in the north of Iceland, the sea level was 400 feet lower when it was occupied by the ice. This is therefore now a half-drowned glaciated valley, which of course is what we call a fjord. The fjord, it's a Norwegian term, means exactly that. It's half-drowned because the water level has come up since it was formed, but also, of course, fjords can be very much deeper than that, deeper than the 400 feet, because a glacier can carve down well below sea level. A river cannot carve below sea level, but a glacier can. Because, of course, a glacier, when it comes down to the sea, it will float. But when it floats, there's a lot more of it down below. So as the floating ice moves out to sea, then it is still scouring the seabed and basically scouring your valleys if it's coming down a fjord as well. So a fjord, therefore, is an over-deepened glaciated valley, now half-drowned as well. And we've got plenty of these up in Iceland. They really are fine. They show up best again on Google Earth. The best of the fjords in the northwest and the southeast, because that's where the high plateaus are, which has got the least of the volcanic influence, which has modified things since post-glacial times. But you can see all the fjords there. Easterfjorda there is one of the places which the cruise ships, all the Viking cruises, call in there as well. It's a lovely spot on one of the fjords up in the northwest there. And in the southeast, we got beautiful fjords too, which again on the Viking cruises going in July this year, they're calling round at these eastern fjords as well. This is Seyðisfjörður, that too, they're a different part of it. And they're lovely fjords. They're not as big and deep, as dramatic as those in Norway, but they are lovely bits of scenery, they really are. This is Seyðisfjörður, which is the town, which is the port for the ferries coming in from Denmark. And the fjord goes off round the corner there, out of sight, you can't see it any further. But they're great features. These are features from the last ice age. And besides the fjords, we've got the other classic features as well. Look at that lovely great U-shaped bowl there up on the side of a mountain. Whether you call it a cirque, which is a French word, a corrie, which is a Scottish word, a coombe, which is a a Welsh word. We haven't got an English word. I don't know what you call it in America. You call it one of those, but anyway, it's a glacial bowl which was formed by the glaciers some time ago. Classic features, we've got plenty of Iceland, and hanging valleys to die for. I love these. Hanging valleys, these are formed where a big glacier, which was originally where the fjord you can now see was in the foreground, reached a great depth. Its tributaries come in, and they are the floor of the tributary glaciers is at a much higher level because the glacier is smaller. It's a U shape, but the U is smaller as well. The ice is in equilibrium because the top surface of the ice is all uniform from the little glacier to the main one, but the floors are not. So a classic feature of a glaciated landscape is a hanging valley, and those two ones that you can see there are absolutely, they're superb examples in the eastern fjords of Iceland. Now, before we leave our subglacial features, I'm just going to mention this one in passing. It's Blåfjall. This is a subglacial volcano. Its distinct shape with that flat top is what makes it recognizable as such. They're features which are relatively unusual because they only form where you've got volcanic regions which were glaciated during the last ice ages. But then these mountains form like that. They're called tuyas. That's spelled T-U-Y-A. And I'm telling you that because I'm not going to go any further into the story of the subglacial volcanoes. They come into my volcanoes lecture, which if you're on the ship, on Viking ship going around Iceland in July, then you can come to it. And if not, well, you can book now and you can be there. Otherwise, you can look up Tuya for yourself. But those are another feature of subglacial geology in Iceland, which is rather fine. Anyway, what happened then after the glaciers had gone? Well, once the glaciers had retreated, weathering came back in. During the summer, you got ordinary weathering, a bit of organic weathering, rain weathering, water weathering. You produce soils. In places, there was a bit of organic material as well. A bit thin because the climate isn't really very helpful for that, but you then got some soils forming. And in places, therefore, in the low valleys around the edges of Iceland, you've got quite good farmland as well, which is basically the part of the economy of Iceland today as well. But you've got more than that too. And this is really what Iceland, post-glacial Iceland is all about, not the soils. The great rock faces which are left there, whether they were glaciated scars or whether they were sea cliffs, I don't mind. But those then, in post-glacial times, they've been degrading. Bits of rock have been falling off, frost shatter, water wash, etc. And you get your great scree slopes, beautiful scree slopes down below. I love those three examples there on the south coast there, huge. Those cliffs, we're looking at 1,000 feet of relief there as well, and massive banks of scree coming down to the coast. Scree is how slopes degrade in the natural processes in natural geological processes. The other way they can degrade, instead of going bit by bit, they can go in large lumps, and a large lump of scree is called a landslide. Here's one. This isn't the best of landslides, I must admit, but you can see where a mass of material came from that sort of bowl up on the left there and came out, and it forms a bit of a fan on the land down below in the valley floor. You can see boulders on top of it, and the edge of the landslide debris is marked by the boundary between the green grass and the sort of buff-coloured, rather scrubby grass, which is there as well. Now, I only mention this one because it's actually at near Borlangavik, which is a village near Ísafjordur, which is visited on the Shorex from Ísafjordur. So if you're on one of the Icelandic cruises, you've got a chance of seeing this one. So that's why I meant, but it's not there. But they're all over Iceland, in fact. The others we won't be seeing. But this is a nice one. It's actually near Akureyri. Again, a classic landslide, which has developed since glacial times. Because to think of a U-shaped valley by definition has got steep sides, has it not? And those steep sides on the higher part, they then degrade. They're partly supported there by the ice when they were being formed. So when you take the ice away, they're unstable automatically because they've lost their support. So therefore landslides then form. The geologists now invented a term for this. They're called paraglacial landslides. They're not due to the glacier, they're due to what the glacier did beforehand. They came after the glacier itself. And there's a nice example there. You can see the bowl where it came from, the headscar with all the rock. You can see the lava flows in it as well. And all that bunch of lumpy ground, the debris, right down to the foreshore you can see there is all the landslide debris, which you can see there. They're a big feature in Iceland. And on some of the excursions when you go to Iceland, you'll see others of these as well. But then also, beside landslides, what else? Well, once we've got rid of the ice, then water erosion takes place. And of course, water then carves what were originally a great smooth cliff face there with the glacier moving from right to left, has now been carved up in post-glacial times, 12,000 years worth of stream and gully erosion to form all those little gullies coming down there. Absolutely lovely example there. That was at Ísafjordur. Here we've got slightly a bit more fluvial features. We're looking now at river cut features, stream cut features in the glacier, superimposed upon the glacial landscape as well. And of course, wherever you've got water flowing, particularly in a glaciated landscape, which has got steps and breaks and hanging valleys inside it, then of course you get your waterfalls. And Iceland has got waterfalls all over. They're glorious, they really are. This is Godafoss near Akureyri. You'll see this on excursions. They all go there from Akureyri. It's the obvious place to go to. It's a lovely waterfall. But like nearly all the waterfalls in Iceland, in detail, its form and its shape and its structure is dictated by the fact that there's a hard layer of horizontal lava. The whole of Iceland basically is formed of practically the whole of Iceland is formed of practically horizontal lava flows. And you get a horizontal lava flow, water comes over the edge of it, and you've got your classic Niagara type waterfall situation with a hard rim at the top and a softer rock down below. There's no geologists around the world as a Niagara type waterfall. And this is what we've got. And that Godafoss is a lovely example. And all the waterfalls are influenced by the lava flows. Here we are, multiple steps in this case. This is a Gullfoss, the big one near Reykjavik. You'll see this on the excursions out of Reykjavik. The big excursion always goes there, and it's the one to do anyway. And again, you can see the steps and the lavas there too. This is, I think, my favourite, Skogafoss. Bit more inaccessible, so you're not likely to see this if you're on a cruise anyway. Where again, a lovely drop. It's a couple of 100 feet high, and it just comes over the clean curtain of water coming over the top, the cliff on the top there. What you're looking at there, of course, the water in post-glacial times, that's eroding that waterfall. All glaciers retreat. Niagara retreats, as you should know. Back at the end of the last ice age, when that waterfall was first developed, when the Iceland became away, the water will probably be landing on the guy which is standing down bottom right. What you're looking at now is post-glacial with 12,000 years worth of waterfall retreat from that guy in the foreground to where it is now. There you are. There's a measure of landscape development rates, which you can see beautifully, can you not? Again, here we got now, in this case, this is Hengifoss out in the eastern fjords. Lovely waterfall. Again, you can see the horizontal, nearly horizontal lavas as well. That's a glaciated bowl. That entire bowl hasn't just been formed by that waterfall. So we've got a combination when we're looking at these big valleys of ice effect and water effect. But that's what landscape is. That's what it's all about. And then, of course, Dettifoss. Now, Dettifoss is famous because it's generally ranked as being the largest waterfall in Europe in terms of flow and height, volume of water and height as well. It is a magnificent waterfall with a huge river dropping over a curtain a couple of 100 feet high. It's spectacular, it really is. Again, it's a classic Niagara type with a hard lava flow across forming the top there, slightly weaker mix of materials down below. So it's formed a great gorge. And if we look from that viewpoint round towards our left, then we can now see there's a gorge going off down there, just like the gorge at Niagara, except this one hasn't got Superman doing a rescue job on Lois Lane, bottom right there. Sorry, this one's in Iceland. But again, it's a glacial retreat. It's a waterfall retreat from the glaciers from the past as well. These are the features of Iceland that we see now. But not only do the glaciers, of course, erode the landscape. Yeah, they do erode it, but then the debris that they produce is another part of the landscape, is it not? The soil, the sediment, the debris around. In Iceland, most of this originates from the glaciers, from the last ice age. Water been moving around since then. We've had volcanic ash added in as well. And here we're looking at a massive sediment, in this case, obviously reworked by the sea, because it's all been carried down from the glaciers down to the sea, and now the sea is knocking it about as well. But basically, we're knocking out sediment. And this is where Iceland comes in with another one of its specialities, a sandur. Now, if you've not heard of a sandur before, well, you have probably, but you've probably called it an outwash plain, which is a perfectly acceptable term. Sandur is the Icelandic term, which is also now part of geological literature. And what a sandur is the great mass of sediments which have been washed out of a glacier. That's why you call it an outwash plain. Pretty clever, that. So where you've got your sediment carried by the glacier. So glaciers are powerful transporting agents. They're loaded with debris. The ice melts away. The rivers then from the meltwater, they're not capable of transporting that sediment so well. So a lot of it gets dumped just out in front of the glacier to form these great outwash plains in classic forms. They're formed on glaciers all over the world. It's just that Iceland's got the biggest and the best of them as well. There's one of them, a detail of one you can see there, with river channels across it as well, and sediment, gravel and cobbles, etc., which whatever might be there as well, forming this great plain. And you can see there too, where the water here, this is low flow. In high flow, the water will cover over those gravel plains. The areas of gravel you can see. So, you know, you get a lot more movement of the gravel. This is from, well, you can see the glacier here in the background. And this, in fact, is the big one on the south coast of Iceland. Let's go to Google Earth now. There it is. We've seen Vatnajökull before. Excuse me. We've seen virtually this same view. There's Jökulsárlón over on the far right there. But what we're looking at now is that black bit down the bottom, which I've labelled Sandur, so you can possibly spot it quite well. This is the outlets from the a number of glaciers, most importantly Jökull, coming from the Vatnajökull ice cap. And we've got here a converged mass of outwash plains forming this huge Sandur. But look at the scale of it. Look at the bar scale bottom right. We're looking here at something which is 20 miles across. This is an impressive feature, it really is. It's also quite accessible because it has now got the ring road. The Iceland road transport system consists of a ring road and a few other branches, and that's about it. The ring road is the important one, it really is. And that's the yellow line which you've seen come up on this map, is the ring road, which goes right across this plain and has problems because the Sandur is an active feature. And every so often, that whole plain gets floodwater coming from the glaciers. Why do you get flood? Well, glaciers do occasionally produce large amounts of water. But in the case of Iceland, we get this on a grand scale. It's up at the top there, labelled in red, Grimsvötn. You might not recognise that name, but that actually is a volcano. It's a subglacial volcano. It's underneath the Vatnajökull ice cap. And it is still active. Every about 10 years or so, or something like that, it becomes active. And when you get a volcano underneath an ice cap, you get a lot of melted ice, which is called water. And that water then flows off down, dictated by the rock topography underneath the ice cap, comes out through the Jökull down in the centre of the photograph, and that massive floodwater spreads across the Sandur down below. And in fact, therefore, makes building a road across it quite a problem. So the road, that's a photograph, not mine obviously, of the road with the bridges across the main channel there. And that was only built in 1974. This is the last bit of the Iceland Ring Road to be built. Before that, you could not drive around Iceland. And since it's been formed, they've had 2-3 significant glaciations, eruptions of Grimsvötn, and that road has been destroyed each time. Mainly the embankments, the bridges survived quite well, but that's another story altogether. But anyway, that was the Sandur down on the coast, the active one. We've got other Sandurs. Here we've got looking at a Sandur with a bit of grass on it here now. This one isn't so active, but you can still see the ice in the background there. This is the Hofsjökull, because here we're up on the Springi Sandur. Now the Springi Sandur is an old Sandur right in the middle of Iceland. It was basically active on a massive scale at the end of the last glaciations, when you had the glaciers were much larger than they are now, and they were melting away on a grand scale as the world climate was warming up, and you got huge amounts of sediment deposited there. That's when the Springi Sandur basically formed. But it's also very much a feature of Icelandic culture, because this great plain in the middle of the country is a significant feature for travellers who are going across the centre of Iceland. During the summer, many people do cross the centre of Iceland. Easy enough as dirt tracks going across it, four-wheel drive roads, which go across there and across the Springi Sandur from Reykjavik southwest up towards the northeast and Akureyri. So Springi Sandur is a well-known feature, and it's now a popular place to go to during the summer. It's not accessible in the winter, and there are lodges and cabins up there. People go up there, stay for a few days. There's the eye. You've got ice caps on both sides of it. It's a dramatic spot to be. It's really rather fine. And when you look at it closely, you can see it's all formed of gravel. This is the gravel from the outwash from the glaciers, but this was from a few, 20,000. No, the melt phase was about 10, 12,000 years ago, or something like that, when that gravel was formed. And in places, therefore, well, you've got this an expanse of gravel, and that's it. And this is now where I'm going to digress now, because I have a lovely story here. Iceland was distinguished itself in 1980 by electing a lady as the Prime Minister. Vigdis Finnbogadóttir was her name. That name might be a bit of a handful, but that's how Icelanders name themselves. She was Vigdis, and she was the daughter of Finnbogadóttir. So that's her name. She was the Prime Minister in the 1980s. In her youth, like so many younger people in Iceland, she had worked as a tour guide. It's a pretty regular summer job in Iceland to be on the tours around there. And Vigdis had been on tours. She was a regular feature, and she was on one day on one of the buses, one of the four-wheel drive buses, going across the centre of the island and across Springi Sandur. So when she was going across, she was telling the story about this and how Springi Sandur was formed by the great meltwater rivers, which were bringing down huge amounts of sediments. And she was getting the story, but she wasn't a geologist. She became a politician, for heaven's sake. But she got the story going pretty well. Anyway, this was going fine until we got to a point when she told the main story, and then there was a bit of a lull, and there were buses going along an area where there was no river in sight. And some guy at the back of the bus calls up, "Well, where's the river now? I can't see it." And Vigdis looked out of the bus and in complete panic and just trying to come up with an answer, said, "It's gone to fetch some more stones." And I just love that. That is a new view, a new look on geology. I love it. Thank you, Vigdis. We got that. I was told that story by other tour guides in Iceland way back. I've been told it a number of times. I love to think it's true, and I hope it is as well. Iceland, a lovely country, a great culture of stories about the Springi Sandur, and a country which has got people living in civilized farmland, and that's a typical view of Iceland in summer. We've got ice up on the high mountains as well there. All right, so we've seen now what ice can do in the past, what it did do in the past to Iceland. We've seen some of the ice there now. What about the snow? Well, the snow, you are not going to see snow in Iceland unless you go in the winter, which is not normally a thing you do, because the winter weather in Iceland is usually pretty horrible. because it's in the track of all the depressions going across the Atlantic, and it's murky weather is the norm in Iceland. A few years ago, Jan and I decided we wanted to go and see Iceland in winter, so we went. Our friends said we were mad. They said the weather will be terrible. It will be an awful time, but we went. We only went for a week. We rented a car in Reykjavik and we set off. And the first day we had typical Icelandic weather. It was snowing, it was sleeting, it was drizzling rain, it was cloud, it was blowing a hoolie. It was horrendous, but that was an experience, was it not? But then the next day, a high pressure system came in and the weather went clear. And we had 5 days when we went all the way around Iceland on the ring road. In March, it was just at the end of winter. The road was clear. We had glorious weather and we saw Iceland and snow in a way which is absolutely magnificent. Gullfoss with snow on it as well, and water and ice in the background too. We went round the corner. We went to the geyser, Strokkur. The geyser, which if you're in Iceland on a tour, you'll always go there. Now, geysers, all right, I do know that 90% of the world's big geysers are in Yellowstone. You really have got it all in the USA there. I'm as envious as heck. But one thing you have not got in Yellowstone is a geyser like this one. It's called Strokkur and it is unique. And what is special about it, besides going up high, is that the way it forms. It doesn't just erupt in little spurts and spurts. It erupts in a dome of water, which then explodes. One of the most fantastic sights you will ever see. When you get on your tour to Iceland, you will go to Strokkur and you will see it and enjoy it. We saw it in winter. We'll move on. If you're coming, if you're on the ship, I'll explain more about how it works in my lecture on the geothermal Iceland. For now, though, this is Jan now. We were carrying on round our trip. We've carried on round the island. Skogafoss, which we were there. We had it to ourselves. Just no one else there at all. That's the lovely thing about going in winter. We went down to Svinefell's Glacier. We've seen this before. It was on the intro, was it not? Where you can walk up to it and we can enjoy it as well whilst we were there. We carried on around the coast, passing the great mass of Vatnajökull in the distance there, round to the town of the town of Hörp. This is the big fishing port in southeast Iceland. Look on a map and it's spelled H-O-F-N. Why that is then pronounced Hörp, I have no idea, but that's how the Icelanders pronounce it. That's the town anyway. We went through there as well. Well, we were there in March, so a lot of the snow had melted away, but we still got ice, which was hanging around on the lakes and the rivers as well. We saw the towns, we saw the countryside at its best. Well, it was absolutely lovely. We were around there, Eskifjorda, Eskifjorda this is as well, which is where we stayed overnight. Remember this, because we stayed overnight there. We stayed in a little place on the edge of town. We walked down into town to get something to eat that evening in the local pizza, which is where you eat in Iceland if you're on land. And on the way back from there, we saw the Northern Lights. They came up. We had clear weather. We were there in this high pressure system and the Northern Lights were superb. There they were over the town. There they were the next night. They're coming up over the village church where we were. It was great to see them as well. You will not see the Northern Lights on your excursions to Iceland in the summer because it doesn't get dark. So forget it for the Northern Lights. You go to Alaska instead, you'll see them up there. But we had the Northern Lights, yes. And then after that, we then went up into the mountains. We carried on around. The road is clear, as you can see there as well. And from the eastern fjords, we were going clockwise, anti-clockwise around the island. We then went up onto the big plateau extending up in the northeast. It was magical. This great ice snow landscape, sunshine, clear blue sky. We had the best of the weather on that day there. It was one of those amazing days which are totally unforgettable across this very empty quarter of northeast Iceland as well. Over the mountain, then the distance, and then down to Mývatn. The bit of a community up there, the volcano Blåfjell is the subglacial volcano in the distance there as well. We are now down here in the volcanic area. the area of activity where volcanoes are not active at the time, but we've got the geothermal regions, and we've got steam vents all around as well. And the steam vents there were still going. They were even better in winter than they were in summer, because the cold air, of course, made the steam clouds even larger. And this is one of those memorable features when we had this incredible day out there. And we could walk on the hills. The hills are steaming. The hills are live, not with music, but with steam. And they were looking superb as well. An unforgettable sight. We had it to ourselves, with virtually no one else there. And that was the view we had there, looking across there. Those are the geothermal power stations up in the northeast there, which were still going away, with clouds of steam coming across, snow all over there as well. And bright sunshine. This was Iceland, and it's lovely. This was snow and ice in Iceland to a large amount. It was absolutely lovely. We enjoyed it. We couldn't help but enjoy it. It was absolutely superb, with snow, ice, steam, sun, the whole lot. And that is the end of my presentation. Try to build up to a climax, which gets exciting when we have everyone in the theatre, but it's all a bit remote when you're watching on screen at home, isn't it? But that anyway is my presentation for today. I have no idea of the time, because I lose track completely, but I do know that we've now got some questions which have come up whilst we've been looking at them. And if I can now pick up onto another screen, I can see what these are, and we'll have a look at some of these questions. I think I'm doing the right thing now. I'm not sure what I'm going to be looking at, and I'm going to have to trawl up these questions now on. We've got plenty of questions, have we not? Now I'm going to start the questions with the first ones that came in, which actually came in yesterday. So I'll take the questions one at a time as they come up as well. And I'm sorry I've got to wear my glasses now. If you can see me now, I can't see myself. All I can see is a blank screen. Oh, I know what I can do, can't I? I can just see actually what I do look like and what you'll be looking like, because I can get rid of that screen now, and I can get rid of that, and I can get rid of that, and I can now see, oh yes, and oh dear, that's a horrendous sight, that really is, but never mind. Right, we'll now go to a question from Joan. Do you visit glaciers on the journey with Viking? No, not right to it. The glaciers of Iceland are all a bit remote from the coast and from the ports, so you're too far away to get there on a day trip. There are day trips which are run by companies in Reykjavik up to the nearest ice cap, the Langjökull, which you can sometimes book if you're there. You can't directly from the cruise itself, so there it is possible to visit them if you organise it yourself. It won't be possible this summer, because with all the restrictions on with COVID, we won't be able to go off and join local excursions. So the answer is no, we'll not be visiting glaciers. We'll see them from a distance. We'll see them very nicely as well, but that's all. Right, question number 2. I have invited 4 of my clients to learn and enjoy who might be visiting Iceland in 22 and 23. Well, in 22 and 23, then you will have no restrictions. You'll be able to do exactly what you want to do in Iceland, which will be really lovely. That was from Linda in Houston. Miriam of Boynton Beach in the US as well. In Iceland, you can see the continental divide. Yes, you can. It was so incredible to see it. Yes, you were. How was the continental divide discovered? Now, the continental divide, of course, is the plate boundary, which is the plate boundary between the North American plate and the Eurasian plate. And the line of that boundary is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which is a sub-ocean floor feature all the way along its length, except where there's so much lava coming out on the divergent plate boundary, because that's what we're looking at when we're looking at continents moving apart. The gap gets filled in by lava. Now, underneath Iceland, you've got a hotspot, and that hotspot meant that there was more and more lava coming out there. That's basically how Iceland was created, entirely within about the last 50 million years or something like that, and that's all. So your continental divide is there through the middle of Iceland, and The rocks are well. The rocks are stable on a human scale. On a geological scale, they're not, because they're moving apart. Are they not? Are they not? I'm reading now. I'm trying to follow this question, which is the screen is moving around a bit, and I'm trying to sort out what's going on. Oh, I've jumped a question up there as well. That one, I'm not sure what's happening to my screen here. You can see me now, but we're now. Oh, that's right. This is Miriam's question, wasn't it? It was so incredible to see the rock formations. How was the continental divide discovered? Well, the continental divide was really discovered by Wegener, who must get credit for it, who was a geologist who recognized that the continents had drifted apart. And he first recognized this, basically at Iceland, because he recognized that the coastlines of Europe and Africa matched up with the coastline of South America and North America, roughly. And I think he did his job with a cut-out atlas and a bit of paper, and he fitted them together. And he realised they fitted together, and he realised that the Atlantic Ocean had only been formed with the continents moving apart. Now, when he first came up with this idea, which was correct, he was derided and laughed at, and people said, "Don't be stupid, that cannot happen." It was finally proved that it did happen in 1960s. And basically, Jack Hess was the one who really put the whole story together on the complete system and recognised that continents were drifting apart. We now don't call it continental drift, we call it plate tectonics. And the plates which have got continents on them or the ocean floor are moving apart. Where the ocean floors are spreading apart, then you get lava filling the gaps in between. That's the mid-Atlantic ridge. If you get too much lava coming up, then you form an island. That's how Iceland was formed. Right. That's how Iceland was formed. I think that would do for that question. I'm going to move on from there as well. So I'm now going to, if I can get the right screen there as well now. How cold does it get? This is from Vicky in Winslow. How cold does it get in Iceland in winter? Well, actually not very cold at all. Because in Iceland, you're in the middle of the Atlantic. The Atlantic is kept warm there by the mid-Atlantic drift and the dog end of the Gulf Stream going up there. So although it freezes, the land freezes in Iceland over the winter, the ocean around it does not. So the winters in Iceland are relatively mild in actual fact. It gets down to, in cold day, it'll get down to 20 degrees below or something like that. But most of the time, it's really quite civilized. So not too bad at all. So nothing scary, and certainly nothing like, actually, not even as cold as Calgary and Montana, where you're in a continental climate, you're away from the warming effect of the oceans. So it's quite gentle actually in Iceland, and it's a nice time to be. The only problem about going in winter is you haven't got much daylight, which is why when Jan and I went there, we went in late March, beginning of April, when we got about 12 hours. Well, March the 21st, you got 12 hours of each, and that was a nice time to see Iceland in winter. In the middle of winter, Iceland is really quite dark with only a couple of hours of daylight. Right, Connie from Laguna Niguel. About 10 years ago, we went to the northeast of Iceland to a magnificent river. There were no rails for tourists to hold on to, and the trail led to a fantastic waterfall. It was scary, but we were thrilled to have been there, and we survived. That's why I'm sending you this message now. Do you know the name of the waterfall, and are the tours to it now? From what you're saying, Connie, you were either at Dettifoss or you were at, what's the other one? I've forgotten the name. I've got a mental blank there. The other waterfall down near there, one near Dettifoss. What's the name of it? Godafoss. Yeah, Jan just told me. My wife is sitting to the side here reminding me of things I forget. You were either of those two. And both of those were in the pictures you've just seen, all right? So you should recognise which one you are. Dettifoss is the really big one. Godafoss is only about 20 metres high, but looking rather lovely. And Will Are there tours to it now? Yes, all the excursions out of Akureyri on the cruise ships, they all go to Godafoss. So yes, you will see that one for definite. Well, if you go on the tour, Dettifoss is a little bit more remote. It's down a dirt road, so it's a bit more of an epic getting there. You haven't got time to do it if you're off a cruise ship, but if you're staying in Iceland, then it's very accessible during the summer. You can get there. It's totally inaccessible in winter. Right, have any fjords in Iceland experienced tsunamis like the one in Geiranger and Norway? Now, yes, Geiranger had its tsunami, didn't it? Round the corner, which was on formed the arm of the glacier down from Geiranger as well. Yes, you got them in there. I don't know of any tsunamis, any big landslide-derived waves forming on the fjords in Iceland. So I think the answer, therefore, is no. Any tsunami developed anywhere else in the world by the time it crosses the Atlantic is not going to have much effect in Iceland. So I think the answer has got to be no, and certainly nothing on the scale of the one which will occur in Geiranger. The question I have here from Berta in Phoenix is, have any fjords in Iceland experienced a tsunami like the one in Geiranger in Norway? Well, the one in Geiranger in Norway, unless it happened last night and I missed it on the telly, hasn't yet happened, but it probably will sometime. The threat is there, and that's why you got all the warning systems up in Geiranger for where it might occur. It is a significant threat, actually, from a big landslide which will occur on the edge of the fjord there. But there's none of those that I know of in Iceland. They have not been a problem either in the past. What are the major mineral exports of Iceland? Is hydrogen extracted and is it used for vehicles? The major mineral exports of Iceland are absolutely none. There is nothing there except basalt, and basalt is just rock. And you can get rock from places all around the world. You don't need to go to Iceland for it. So why bother, basically? And that's about it. So no. And as far as any other minerals, there's nothing else in mine. There's no mines in Norway of any single mineral in mineable quantity. And Iceland spar is, of course, a mineral named after Iceland, but it's found in tiny quantities. It has been mined in small amounts in Iceland, but it's not exported from there now at all there, and that's it. And the hydrogen extracted from the minerals there, is it used in vehicles? Not that I know of. I don't know what hydrogen extraction they've got going on there at the moment. Why do I always get these difficult questions? I should have glossed over that one, shouldn't I? Can I move on? Alan from the Solomons in the USA. I didn't know the Solomons were in the USA. Fine, never mind. Are the Iceland glaciers retreating? Yes, they are. Like all glaciers all over the world, they are retreating overall. Some of them surge occasionally. Glacier surge, a peculiar feature when you get a build-up of water underneath and therefore the ice moves on top of it, and you can get surges. But basically, no, all Iceland glaciers are retreating. But the glaciers are really quite small beer. The notable feature in Iceland, of course, are the ice caps, which are that much larger. They're shrinking slightly, but not so you can actually notice it, so you can't tell. Right, Brandy from Huntsville, your pictures are amazing. Okay. It makes me want to travel to Iceland and see it for myself. I hope you eventually get there, Brandy, and I hope you enjoy it. Very much so. William, how did trees establish themselves in Iceland after the ice ages? Yeah. Now, I'm a geologist. I'm not a botanist. So I'm struggling here. I think we're talking wind-blown seeds, which will get across oceans anyway, will they not? That's the best I can come up with for them. Why do I always get these difficult questions? I wish I hadn't tried to answer that one. So I'm not going to go any further on that. Don't know. Have to pass on that one as to any decent. How do trees establish themselves in Iceland after the ice age? Wait a bit, we've got a different question here. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong question. Why wasn't there any volcanic activity during the ice age of 20,000 years ago? There was. Sorry, my screen is now moving around a bit as well. There was activity then. Not sure what's happening here now. Was there volcanic activity during the ice age 20,000? Yes, there was. The volcanoes are going all the time, and in fact, there's plenty of subglacial volcanic features which can now be seen and recognised there, up to around about 20,000 years ago. So yes, there was there now, but I wasn't showing you that. There are one or two places in Iceland I can think of now. I'm struggling now to think of exactly where you have got some very nice pillow lavas. And pillow lavas are what are formed underneath water. And it's the pillow lavas which are formed underneath some of the glaciers in the past, which can still be seen. So yes, there was volcanic activity there.